Hello. This is the second part of this story. If you haven't seen the first one, we recommend you watch it first. I was constantly wondering how to live. 46 years old is not old. I hadn't decided what I was going to do yet, but I knew for sure I had to change my life. It's hard for a slave to live free. For the years of my marriage, I got used to having my wife to solve almost all the global issues of my life. It was easier that way. I indifferently drifted with the current and eventually swam in. Now my wife is drifting through life with someone else. Did I love Michelle? I did. And worst of all, I do now. Despite all my bravado, but the train sailed. She's the wife of another, more fortunate and richer man. At least that's her equal. As she said the last time we met, there's so much to talk about. Of course, I missed Michelle. Her eyes, her hands, her body finally. We had crazy sex until the very last moment. Crazy? I squeaked. For 6 months, there had been a third man invisibly present in our marital bed. She was having sex with me, just sex, not love. Because she loved someone else. And thought about his Shamsky. I kissed her after my lover, unwittingly licking the traces of his love. I can imagine how they laughed at me. How disgusting it all was. And after all that, she offered to stay friends. The whore. At the beginning of winter, my son called. Daddy, I'm getting married. The son's voice vibrated with joy. To Natasha, I knew that Natasha. That girl from the orphanage. Congratulations. I'm glad you've made up your mind. I fell silent, waiting for the rest of the story. Daddy, we are inviting you to the wedding. We'll only have the closest people together. A few friends are new. Natasha really wants to meet you. The wedding is on December 6th. Thank you, Yura. I'll try to be there. I was happy for my son. I only wish he'd be alright. Dad. Yura spoke again after a short pause. Your ex won't be here. I didn't even tell her. I don't want to see her. The son stubbornly didn't want to call her mother. Eura, she loves you. After all, she is your mother. I tried to talk sense into my son. With her got to do with it. Dad, we've already discussed it. Let's not talk about sad things. Come here. Natasha and I are waiting. My son turned off his phone. The phone kept ringing and ringing. The person at the other end seemed to know perfectly well that I home and waited patiently for me to be able to answer. Hello. I squeaked out in a sleepy voice. Yuri, sang her pleasant woman's voice. I'm calling on behalf of Inger. It was said in such a way that when I heard this name, I had to shudder with happiness. In fact, the name meant nothing to me. There was a pause in the phone. I was about to hang up when the woman continued, could you be at the Solid Bank at 12 o'clock? I looked at the alarm clock. The hands showed 20 minutes past 12. I couldn't. Why not? The woman was surprised in a childish way because I do not understand why I need it. I'm not going to take a loan from your bank. The name of Inger does not tell me anything. By the way, you haven't introduced yourself either. I'm sorry. I'm Jean, Inger's secretary. She wants to talk to you about a job. A job? I was surprised. I have a job. Yuri. A visit to the bank doesn't bind you to anything. The car will bring you in and take you out. It's up to you anyway. Jana's voice was enveloping. And maybe this is the beginning of a new life? I wonder what this Inger wants to offer me. Well, not the position of manager. Jean turned out to be a young blonde girl in a breathtakingly short skirt. I even stared at her shapely legs and flesh-colored stockings for a while. Hello, Yuri. Her eyes shone with genuine happiness at seeing me. Come in, Inga was waiting for you. She opened before me a massive oak door with a signed manager. In a huge office, furnished in the style of high-tech, stood a huge desk at the head of which sat a young woman in her 40s in business dark green suit. When she saw me, she smiled, fixing a lock of white hair falling on her forehead. Hello, Yuri, come in and have a seat. Tea, coffee. Thank you. I just had breakfast. I pretended to be a jerk on purpose to annoy the mistress of the office. Well, as you wish, she was not at all embarrassed by my answer. Before we get down to business, I want you to watch a little movie. She pressed a button on her computer and a black and white movie played on a big screen hanging on the left wall. The screen was showing footage of me smearing Mr. Shamsky's guards on the asphalt. I looked questioningly at the banker. This is the video from the camera in front of your house? I am friends with your neighbor, and he kindly provided me with this footage. As far as I know, Mr. Shamsky has not made any accusations against you. Shit. How banal. Is she trying to blackmail me? That's the first thing that came into my head. Inga smiled. Mr. Zagorsky, I didn't call you here to blackmail you. I want to offer you a job. It was as if she read my mind. I was silent. A job as my bodyguard. I am going through a difficult time, and I need a trustworthy man by my side. She smiled wearily. Judging by this movie, she nodded at the screen. You can handle it. And what makes you think I'm reliable? I made some inquiries about you. Besides, I know a little of your ex-wife, Michelle Zagorskaya, now Mrs. Shamsky. The banker took in her hands a thin blue folder. It was she who recommended me to you. I began to boil. That's not enough to be the protege of a hall. Absolutely not. I do not need anyone's recommendation. The mistress of the office stood up. I'm not rushing you. Think it over till tomorrow. If you decide, call me. She pushed the card with her index finger and it slid across the perfectly smooth surface in my direction. I kept my gaze fixed on the woman in admiration. Yes, a suit, and you could have worn a longer skirt. In the morning, I dialed a simple number. Yes. A familiar voice answered. I agree. When should I start? Immediately. The car is already outside your house. The banker passed out. I looked out the window. There was a big black Lexus with tinted windows in front of the driveway. So I became the personal bodyguard of Ingarber, the manager of the Solid Bank. I quit my former job. My bosses did not want to let me go. There are a lot of engineers, but good turners can be counted on the fingers of one hand. But I insisted, and in the end, I was still dismissed at my own request. But at parting, I was told that if I changed my mind, they would be happy to hire me back. I also attended my son's wedding. Everything was very modest. A few friends of Natasha and Euro and myself, we sat in a cafe and drank a little, and at about 10 p.m., we left. Everything went well except for a small incident. As the evening drew to a close, a well-dressed unfamiliar young man came up to our table. Yuri Zagorsky? He politely addressed my son. Mrs. Shumsky congratulate you on your wedding. The man handed Yuri envelope. The guests sitting at our table fell silent. My son was the first to break the silence. Please tell Mrs. Shamsky that I do not accept gifts from strangers. Yura looked at me. The man stood for a while holding the envelope in his hands, then nodded his head. Put the unexpected gift into an inside pocket of his jacket and left. For a moment, I thought I saw the figure of Michelle at the back of the hall. My heart beat faster. I wondered if I still had feelings for her. Wishing happiness to the young people, I went home that very evening. I was only given one day off and had to go to work tomorrow. To be honest, I had a vague idea about my future work life. I honestly told the head of the bank security service, but he patted me on the shoulder and told me that my duties were not so much as a bodyguard, but more as a companion to Mrs. Gerber. I just have to be with her at all times and accompany her to business and informal meetings. Her physical security will be taken care of by other, specially trained people. He gave me a plastic pass card and a Glock 18 with a laminated carry permit issued in my name. Before starting my duties, I went to the archaeological and psychiatric dispensaries where I received certificates that I was not crazy and not an alcoholic. When I handed them to the chief of the security service, he smiled. I didn't doubt it, but order is order. The chief put the car keys in front of me. You will have to live in the house of Inger. Stay there around the clock. Accompany her to and from work. And wherever she tells you to go. The chief stood up and held out his hand to me. Good luck. The evening before my first day of work, I visited the barber shop, shaved and got my clothes ready. In the morning I got up early. I put on black jeans, a white shirt, and a black tweed jacket loose fitting so that I couldn't see the holster under my arm. I pulled on my black shoes, threw on my coat and headed to work. So far, everything suited me fine. I lived in the apartment of a friend who had gone abroad for 6 months, but he was coming back in a week. Therefore, living in the house of Inger suited me fine. Getting into a black Lexus, I drove to the intersection of the avenue and the street leading to the elite cottage village, the same in which I once lived with Michelle. The intersection offered an amazing view of the pine-covered old city park. But I glanced indifferently at the snow-covered pines, turned right and headed for the bank manager's house. Half an hour later, I was there. The gate was open. I drove up to the house, parked the car, and got out. I approached a 2-story mansion lost in the depths of an ancient park. Careful not to slip, I climbed the frost-covered steps. It was quite early and the janitor had not yet had time to clean them and sprinkle them with sand and salt. I rang the doorbell a few seconds later, the door opened, and a sleepy tall young blonde girl appeared in the doorway. Harsh golden blonde hair fell in waves over her shoulders. Her mounds of breasts were visible beneath the corsage with an elongated neckline. A slender waist, ample hips, and long legs completed a landscape that was impossible to look away from. The piercing blue eyes put me in a half-conscious state. The pause was dragging on, and the blonde was the first to go. Who do you want? She asked grudgingly, pressing her hand to her mouth, trying to hide a yawn. Good morning. I'm here to see Inga. Are you selling something? The maid looked me in the eyes with a challenge. Excuse me. I was too busy looking at you. Is your curiosity satisfied? Rather, I am delighted. I pulled out of my pocket to pass. I'm Yuri Zagorsky. I'll be working for you. She looked at me incredulously. There's no need to get so excited. I smiled as charmingly as possible. Is Inger home? Yes. She led me into the living room. Wait. I'll warn the hostess about your arrival. What did you say your name was? Zagorsky. Yuri Zagorsky, Valentina. She introduced herself and left the room wiggling her hips. Valentina returned a few minutes later. Your mistress is waiting for you. She led me to the door. I turned the knob and entered the long, narrow room, dark with heavily curtained windows. Inger stood in the middle of the room and didn't even look at me. Tensely frozen, she stared out the only window that was not curtained. I waited a while, getting used to the half-light. The woman turned to me. Hello, Yuri. She spoke in a low, husky voice. Are you ready to begin your work? Yes. I stared at the hostess. Have you been warned that you will live here? She didn't seem to hear my answer. Is there no objection? No objections. Will they show me my room? Yes. Of course. Valentina, show Yuri out the room. I was given was on the second floor. Quiet, spacious room contained a massive oak table, a large comfortable leather armchair, and a large bed against the wall. Opposite the table was a fireplace, over which hung two antique guns. On the table was a statue of a knight and several books. Valentina was standing in the doorway, keeping a close eye on me. If you need anything, just let me know. Breakfast was in 15 minutes. Valentina did her best to hide her curiosity. That's all right for now. Thank you. Can you show me where the dining room is? I smiled with the tips of my lips and looked at the maid. Valentina blushed. Follow me. She turned without waiting for my answer and began to walk down the stairs holding up her short skirt. You did everything you could to get me to quarrel with my son. Michelle blushed with anger. You still don't understand that. He's my son too. Calm down and don't yell. I tried to contain my emotions. Michelle somehow found my address and showed up at my door late last night, clearly intending to cause a scandal. I was not burning with the desire to argue with her and wanted not even to open the door. But then I thought that her scream would rouse the whole house. Michelle, let's talk business. What do you want from me? That I would reconcile you with the son. But that's your business. I didn't tell Euro anything. You're the one who showed him your lover by letting him touch your breasts in front of your son. What do you want from me now? I spoke calmly, trying not to raise my voice, but he not only did not invite me to the wedding and refused to accept a gift. It seemed to me that Michelle was about to cry. In front of me in a gorgeous evening gown and mind-blowing fur coat sat a well-groomed young woman who was once my wife. And what are these tricks? You turned down the job I offered you at my company. But when that bitch Inga beckoned you to take it, you took it. Did you have a thing with her? Is she your mistress? Don't let me see her. I'll tear her hair out. Michelle was no longer in control of her emotions. Michelle. You haven't forgotten that it was you who cheated on me for 6 months with Shamsky. That it was you who left me in cold blood and went to your lover. That it was you who watched indifferently when his thugs tried to beat me up. It is not for you to lay a claim on me. I looked her straight in the eye. As for your son, you decide for yourself. He's a grown man and he decides for himself who he wants to be with. Now go away. I have to work tomorrow. It seemed to me that when Michelle left, she tried to hide her guilty look. Dear listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel. It stimulates me to release new videos for you.